ensure that the meeting runs smoothly and all applicants and citizens are able to communicate with the commission at the appropriate times. If you are here today and would like to speak about a case, please provide your name clearly into the microphone, and please be sure to sign in at the back of the room or at the podium for documentation purposes. If you are here today to speak about a case, you must speak up when the chairperson calls for public comment. Will staff please take roll?
Certainly. Ms. Gallo? Here. Mr. Greenberg? Here. Mr. Ledecker?
Here.
Mr. Salibi?
Here.
Mr. Shelton?
Here.
And Ms. Thomas?
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. In order to avoid ex parte communications, DDRC members are under strict instructions not to discuss cases under consideration with the public or with each other outside of the public forum. The meeting typically starts off with staff calling the case, giving a summary of the project, and then calling on the applicant to present if they wish. Decisions are typically made in one evening, and decisions may be appealed within 30 days to a court of competent jurisdiction. Oaths will be administered individually as we hear either from applicants or from live speakers. Applicants with requests before the DDRC are allotted a presentation time of 10 minutes. This time should include, but is not limited to, an overview of the project, case history, and any pertinent meetings held regarding the request. This time also includes all persons presenting information on behalf of the applicant, such as attorneys, engineers, and architects. This time limit does not include any questions asked by the DDRC or staff regarding the request. Members of the general public are given the opportunity to address their concerns in intervals of 2 minutes. Applicants may have 5 minutes to respond, and staff has a timer and will make presenters aware of when their time has expired. Staff, are there any changes to the agenda?
The only change to the agenda was that 1418 Gladden Street, which was on regular agenda when the draft agenda went out, was moved to the consent agenda.
Very good, thank you. The DDRC uses the consent agenda to approve non-controversial or routine matters by a single motion and vote. If a member of the DDRC or the general public wants to discuss an item on the consent agenda, that item is removed from the consent agenda and considered during the meeting. The DDRC then approves the remaining consent agenda items. Just to be clear, that means that if there is an item on the consent agenda you would like to discuss, it will not be discussed unless you request it be removed from the consent agenda, and now is the time to voice that request. Will staff please read the consent agenda?
Our first item on the consent agenda is 400 Laurel Street, a request for design approval for construction of a new ancillary outparcel building in the City Center Design Development District. 732 Saluda Avenue, a request for design approval for exterior changes and preliminary certification of the Bailey Bill in the Five Points National Register District. The third project is 2320 Preston Street, request for design approval for construction of a single-family home in the Old Shandon Lower Waverly Protection Area, Area A. 2401 Green Street, request for design approval for construction of a single-family home in Old Shandon Lower Waverly Protection Area, Area B. 2402 Stark Street, request for design approval for construction of a single-family home, Old Shandon Lower Waverly Protection Area, Area B. 2404 Stark Street, request for design approval for construction of a single-family home, Old Shandon Lower Waverly Protection Area, Area B. 1418 Gladden Street, request for design approval for an addition in Melrose Heights, Oaklawn Architectural Conservation District. And that would be all on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any members of the DDRC or the public who would like any of the consent agenda items just discussed removed from the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, I'll open the floor to a motion to approve the consent agenda and the May minutes.
I'll move to approve all the items on the consent agenda with their associated conditions for approval, along with approval of the meeting minutes from our May meeting.
Second.
Thank you very much. Staff, please take the vote.
Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Mr. Greenberg? Mr. Ledecker?
Yes.
Mr. Shelton?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
And Mr. Salibi?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much. On to the regular agenda.
first case on the regular agenda, DDRC 2025-0023 at 631, 606, and 638 Sumter Street, 1309, 1311, and 1313 Blossom Street, 611 and 613 Marion Street is a request for a certificate of design approval for the construction of 2 new student dormitories. This proposal is for the development of 2 new student dormitories on the campus of the University of South Carolina. It consists of an addition to the site of the existing Honors Residence Hall at the northwest corner of the intersection between Blossom Street and Sumter Street, and a replacement of the existing McBride Residence Hall situated across Sumter on the northeast corner of that intersection. The structure replacing the McBride Residence Hall, the larger of the 2 proposed dormitories referred to in this report as the Sumter Street residences, will wrap the Thomas Cooper and Special Collections libraries and feature a community gathering pavilion called the Creativity Hub, located centrally on its Blossom Street facade. In section 5.2 on architectural style or theme, the 2 proposed structures are sensitive to the architecture of their most adjacent neighbors. In the case of the proposed addition to the Honors Residence Hall site, its 6 stories of predominantly light tan brick and gently sloped roof are an extension of the existing Honors Residence shown here on the screen. The replacement of the McBride Residence Hall borrows from the mid-century modernist language of the Thomas Cooper Library. It encircles, and that is this image here. Despite the stylistic differences between the 2 proposed structures, they read in their shared dematerialized corners that invite pedestrian interaction as a cohesive pair of contemporary buildings that will activate and enrich this section of downtown. In section 5.3.5 on wall articulation, 4 interstitial spaces, which read as curtain wall glass bars, shown in this diagram well here, break up the mass of the Sumter Street residences. Within these bars, public spaces, just designated as lounges and study areas, sit atop a ground level breezeway shown in the site plan that provides connectivity between the building perimeter and the site's interior. The glass-clad corners of both structures and the Creativity Hub, centered on the Sumter Street residence's Blossom Street facade, shown in this diagram, function similarly. They add depth to the facades and invite individuals into the development. On section 5.6 on landscaping, a highly articulated landscape plan weaves together green spaces, plazas, and pathways on both the interior and perimeter of the site. The spaces between the interfacing elevations on the Sumter Street residence's east and west wings and the Thomas Cooper Library are host to 2 gently sloped pathways that run north-south and are dotted with shaded platforms for studying and rest. These pathways intercept students entering the core of the site from the 4 ground-level breezeways. The primary east-west axis of travel on the site's interior runs along the northern face of the Sumter Street residence's southernmost wing and provides connectivity to the site of the new Honors Residence Hall across Sumter. Landscaping populates the space between these pathways and lines the base of all building frontages. On the Blossom and Sumter Street frontages, open spaces framed by brick retaining walls and landscaping invites entry into the Creativity Hub and primary building entrances located at the corners. That's shown well here in this drawing. The pedestrian realm along Blossom Street and Sumter Street will be greatly improved with the shifting of the existing sidewalk on Blossom between the pedestrian bridge and Sumter Street toward the new building facade. Shade trees are going to be planted in that widened furnishing zone that serves as an additional buffer between vehicles and pedestrians on the sidewalk there. Section 5.7.1 on storefront composition, accessories, and details. The building's primary entries, as I was mentioning, located at the 2 corners nearest the intersection of Blossom and Sumter, are pronounced by canopies and brick hardscaping that frames the open space surrounding the entrances. Additional entry into the development is provided at each of the corners and ends of the Sumter Street residences and centered on the Blossom Street frontage with the Creativity Hub. These entrances are similarly marked by pronounced overhangs and glass curtain walls. The section on grillwork and metalwork and other details within 5.7.1. Metal sunshades wrap the section of curtain wall glass on the corners of the Sumter Street residences and the section of the Creativity Hub that extends out toward Blossom Street. That's shown in this elevation here. Smaller metal fins that provide shade jut out horizontally from either the top or near the top of the majority of openings on both structures. On 5.7.2, exterior walls and materials, The materiality and composition of the facades on both structures add richness to the development. Red brick cladding laid with alternating recess courses comprises the bottom 2 floors of the Sumter Street residences. Tan brick and precast banding, which mimic the existing building on the Honors Residence site, span 5 of that story's 6 structures. Wood composite on the underside of the awnings, an array of metal panels, and the extensive use of glass curtain walls add variety to the surfaces of both structures and contrast the raw texture of the brick towards the bottom. The applicant is here, but to conclude, staff finds that the project substantially meets the design guidelines and recommends granting a certificate of design approval with the following conditions: that any changes to the design or additional details that are developed be submitted to staff for review.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present? And if so, would you like to present? Great, come on up. If you will, please state your name and whether you swear to tell the truth in these proceedings.
My name is Justin Abrams, and I do affirm that I will tell the truth in these proceedings.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. So we are here on behalf of the University of South Carolina today for the Sumter Street Residential Project. A project designed to enhance and experience first-year students while aligning with the urban and architectural goals of the City Center Partnership. The City Center Design Guidelines. As Tristan said before, this project consists of 2 constructions on the northern corners of Blossom and Sumter Street. As I go forward, the site plan, the first of which is the residence hall to be added onto the existing Honors College. This is what we're calling now Sumter Street East and West, wraps Thomas Cooper. Again, as Tristan said, he did such a good job of explaining this all the way through. I'll probably make this very, very brief. And let me also say, I want to extend our gratitude to city staff, as they always have been. Were great in this process as always, and they're always a joy to work with. Here you see an earlier conceptual design where we know that this entrance into the campus is a major gateway. And so, as Tristan noted, those glass corners really provide a lantern, as I go forward, a lantern onto that entrance onto Sumter and the Marion Street Promenade. Again, further breaking down of those masses as occurs through those glass, what we are calling bridges, which are communal spaces and lounges, and allows us not to be a large, long bar along all those streets. Again, the materiality and design of the addition to the residence honors residence, I should say, will be very much modeled in detailing and materiality of that building. It's 6 stories to match the northern bar of that, and very much will sit in and be part of that existing construction. Again, the glass corners and the low roof overhangs allow pedestrian interaction and really call out where entries are on this building. As we get into the Sumter East and West, again, we have a pretty clear articulation of a base mill and top. This is both in line with the City Center Design Guidelines and with USC's design guidelines. The 2-story pavilion-like structure that we're calling the Creativity Hub is meant to be an entry and a place of community and learning that links these 2 wings together. Again, the expansive glass at the corners and at these bridges are to highlight the nodes of pedestrian interaction and to really engage the street front and provide interaction there. A lot of care was taken to know that Thomas Cooper Library is a very significant landmark on campus. So the roof line is kept below the penthouse level of that building, and we kept well back to the existing footprints of McBride in order to not interrupt that northern facade in that kind of central space on campus. One thing to note, this floor plan is updated from what is in your packet just for further development with the university and when it comes to unit makeup. And we wanted to reduce some square footage. So I just wanted to highlight that with you guys. This is a little bit of a change, which you would have seen from a couple of weeks ago. But again, the bars and the wrapping are substantially the same, and the placement of the bridges is the same. The Creativity Hub, again, is meant to be a large gathering space. The interior of this is still undergoing design, as we will update staff as we continue to to further iterate this, but the idea is that this is a large gathering space that is both entered from Blossom Street and from the interior promenade, which I'll show you in a minute. Did we not have the landscape plan? Sorry. Is it? Okay.
Just scroll back to where.
Well, I can show you here. Okay, so on the interior side of the space, an interior promenade runs east and west, and the two main bridges where the Sumter East and West go from southern portion to northern portion are breezeways and actually interaction. And so that becomes an east-west promenade that engages both the Marion Street Promenade and Bridge and Sumter Street. As you mentioned before, the north-south pathways are accessible, which are indicative of the goals of the university, providing some stairs and then shading spaces for small group gatherings on the internal portion of that. With that, we think this project meets the goals both of the City Center design guidelines, the university's need to increase housing on campus, and adds to the fabric of the city and the campus. And with that, we welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Do any members of the DDRC have questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. You're dismissed.
Shall I sign in?
What's that?
Am I to sign in?
I don't, does the applicant sign in?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking. You're welcome. I believe the next step is asking, would any members of the public like to speak on the project? All right, hearing none, I'll open the floor to a motion.
Well, this is probably the first case I've seen where the staff recommendations are to not change anything, which is very impressive, and I did like the design, so I will make a motion to approve the design. I guess I have to read all these addresses. Student housing at 631, 606, 638 Sumter Street, 1309, 1311, 1313 Blossom, and 611 and 613 Marion Street, with the only condition that any changes to the design or additional details that are developed be submitted to staff for review.
Second.
All right, will staff please take the vote?
Ms. Gallo? Yes. Mr. Greenberg? Yes. Mr. Ledecker?
Yes.
Mr. Shelton?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
And Mr. Salibi?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you very much.
All right, this is 1130 Gladden Street. It's a request for a certificate of design approval for new construction on a vacant lot in Melrose Heights, Oak Lawn Architectural Conservation District. The initial proposal for this site was presented at the May meeting. At that time, the DDRC expressed concern over the length and massing of the proposed duplex. Since that time, the applicant has made adjustments to the design to better break up the length of the duplex. When looking at new construction in Melrose, we look at Section 3 of the guidelines, which includes sections on size and scale, massing, materials, textures, and details, etc. When it comes to size and scale, the guidelines state that new buildings should be visually compatible with surrounding buildings, and do not disrupt buildings that disrupt the existing scale of the area. This particular building is 1 story in height and about 75 feet long, which includes the porches, front and back porches. The average in this area is anywhere from 55 to 65 feet long. This area also has a mix of larger scale 2-story buildings and smaller 1-story buildings. Staff finds that the 75-foot length is a little bit longer than typical and right in this direct neighborhood. However, the applicant has made efforts to break up the massing in the same way that we would ask owners of historic homes to put an addition onto their home. So the back portion of the house, roughly 8 to 10 feet, is inset from the rest of the house. So it reads more like an addition. This inset will be at least 1 foot, so it will be a significant shift in massing. Additionally, massing guidelines state to break up uninteresting box-like forms into smaller varied masses, which the applicant has addressed, which was one of the concerns from DDRC last time. It is a generally simple rectangular form, but it does have details that vary the massing, including the rear inset, the front porch, and the applicant has added a projecting gable bay onto the Pickett Street facing elevation to provide some variation. There have also been some comments on detailing of the property. The applicant has changed a few items, including the porch columns. Do not have specific measurements on those, but is something that is typical for staff to work through with the applicant. They're right now proposing brick bases with square columns on top, which is common for the neighborhood. I'm just going to run through real quick. So this is the design that was shown in May. You can see the side of it doesn't have much variation in massing. This is the revised drawing that has been submitted by the applicant. The back part of the building is now recessed. The roof is lower, so it reads more like an addition. The side also has a projecting bay, which is not uncommon in this particular neighborhood. That's just the front elevation. Again, with the sides. The floor plans were not updated, so this is just a rough sketch from staff of what the new massing will look like in floor plan. So you can see the back part is cinched in a bit. Likewise, this is the site plan for the house, parking in the backyard. The applicant has agreed to do permeable parking, and where the red line is where a fence is proposed to be located. For staff recommendations, staff finds that proposed new construction at 1130 Gladden Street, or TMS number 11413-09-01, is in keeping with Section 3 of the Melrose Heights Oak Lawn Architectural Conservation District Design Guidelines and recommends granting a certificate of design approval with the following conditions. The cement fiberboard siding will have a smooth texture and a 4 to 5 inch reveal. The front porch will be at least 6 feet deep. Porch flooring may be tongue and groove or cement. Windows be aluminum clad with trim around each window with mullions separating the paired windows or grouped windows at least 4 inches wide. Front door may be wood or fiberglass with final design approved by staff. Foundation will use a brick veneer with concrete or brick stairs. The back portion of the building from the side door to the back porch will be inset by at least 1 foot. Details of the parking area and fence to be approved by staff, and all other details deferred to staff. Do you have any questions?
Rachel, on your item 4 setback, the staff report reads the proposed setback is 16 feet. Staff recommends that the setback be consistent with the adjacent house to be in keeping with the guidelines. What is the adjacent house setback?
I haven't measured it exactly, but that's pretty typical. We just say it needs to be the same.
Okay, but it's a recommendation here, but has that recommendation been met so far about the setback?
Yes.
Okay. And where are we with the columns the supports on the front porch. That was one of the things we heard a lot from the public about, is they look a bit larger than they were in May now.
I believe the comment was that they still seem too small. People from the neighborhood can confirm that, but it's pretty normal to work with the applicant at staff level to work out those kind of fine details. The last house he did, I can't remember what the minimum requirement was, but it was between 8 and 10 feet for his columns. Then it would be similar or a little bit bigger here.
The 8 to 10 feet was
Inches,
inches, okay.
yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any precedent for a house of this scale on a corner lot in Melrose?
On a what?
On a corner lot in Melrose, where it's exposed, the full length of the building is exposed?
Well, if this was a historic house, there was a historic house here, we would not tell them they could not put an addition onto the house. So with the house typically being anywhere from 55 to 65 feet long, additions can be, 20 feet or so sometimes. The addition that was just approved goes back an additional 40 feet onto their property. So it's not uncommon, no, it happens.
I guess to Councilman Shelton's point, the recently approved addition, was that on a corner lot? And I guess the distinction is, if it were sandwiched between two other homes and there were a 1 or 2 foot inset, it might not have the same effect as if you're driving down a street along the length, all 75 feet or whatever it is in that other case of the home. It was on a corner lot?
No, that's true. I mean, if you remember the project in Wales Garden, that was another one that was on a corner lot, very visible. It was not approved, so.
It was not approved.
That was Wales Garden.
Oh, yeah, and that was
But it was a very large.
6 or 7 months ago. It was a while back.
It was an addition onto a house that was bigger than the house itself. Yes.
Right. Thank you. Any other council members have questions for staff before? Yeah, that's next in the process. Yep. Yeah, so the applicant is here and it sounds like would like to come up and speak. So if you'll please come up to the podium, state your name for the record and whether you swear to tell the truth in these proceedings.
My name is Jerome Prezi, and I do.
Thank you.
I just want to answer a couple of the questions that you all had. If you look at 1420, it's on a corner street, 1420 Woodrow Street. That's 70 feet long.
Okay, has staff, have you mentioned these to staff, and do we have any examples? We don't.
Well, I was recommended to go and look at the roof there when we had some discussions about the roof, and I measured it just to make sure because I thought it was long as well. As she mentioned earlier, I'm the owner of 1409 Woodrow Street. That came through this committee back some 6-7 months ago, and it is a total of 70 feet. It's not on a corner lot, but it's a total of 70 feet as well. 1200 Shirley Street is also roughly 70 feet long, and it's on a corner lot. So as it relates to in keeping in the neighborhood, we've added some things that the neighbors had concerns with, like the columns. 1409 Woodrow Street did not have Craftsman style columns. Again, it passed here on the consent agenda. It had the same length, as we said, wall section wise. It's a total of 72 feet with porch and deck. So we have a very similar product here. As it relates to what we've done, we have done everything we have been asked by the board, as well as contend with the recommendations of Ms. Wallings. I do have information here, which I honestly think is the root of some of our issues, where we have requested a letter from the City of Columbia Zoning Department just explaining what we could do at this location. I honestly think there's more of an issue with it being multifamily than it is a single family. These same guidelines did not apply to me when this was a single family unit. there had been, again, 1409 was approved on consent agenda, which meant no one came out with these problems. So it has been mentioned in a lot of the information and last month that residents just don't want multifamily there. This lot was vacant for 39 years. We purchased it, we had a design, we're designing it based on what we see in the neighborhood, and we meet the zoning requirement. That's all I have.
Thank you. And I'll just note for the record that you can rest assured that while residents may bring up issues with, parking or the multifamily use of the dwelling, we don't consider any of that.
Okay.
They can bring it up if they like, but that's not within our purview. That would be zoning. And so we're strictly looking at it from a design perspective. So any comments or questions we have would relate to that.
Okay.
You don't need to be concerned that we're considering
Well,
the use of the facility.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's not masked.
Sure.
I want to make sure that's not masked. And this is because if you look at some of the information that was presented via here at the podium and or written, in reference to since it's now approved for multifamily, then let's look at design. That to me is the intent of this is our real problem. And so it's, we're dealing with design more so than that. And again, the reference to 1409 and other homes that are nearby, these things were not applicable. So I just want to make sure that's on the record.
Sure. And I will say, you mentioned, and I didn't get the straight name, you mentioned 1,200. And before I go on, do any other commissioners have comments or questions for the applicant?
I have a quick question. I just wanted to make sure, I think one of the things that was presented in some of the letters from the community members were things about columns and things, and you were able to update those. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I addressed the column issue not based on a recommendation from Ms. Wallings. It was something I heard here from the neighbors the last time. However, on Woodrow Street, the columns are 8 inches. They're not Craftsman style columns. Again, not an issue. So there seemed to be some masking here.
Yeah, so I have a question. So the back of the building, you have storage units, right? That's the plan?
Well, it's attached, yeah, storage.
Yeah, attached to the building. Have you considered having a detached storage building on the property instead of it being attached? To me, that would be an easy win to reduce the overall length of the property.
Well, what we did on the back was we removed, originally the storage building was on the exterior wall. Ms. Waller made the recommendation to move them on the interior wall. So on the exterior wall, you don't see that 8 feet, it's on the interior wall. And it's a back porch there as well. So the storage building is not protruding on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the roof line is still going, so the
Okay.
overall building is still at 75 feet. So if we detach the storage, if you had a shed or some type of accessory dwelling to do that storage function for this property, to me, that's a quick win with the neighborhood, right? Because now you can reduce the overall length. I don't know I can't remember the length of the storage unit per se, but I mean, to me,
6 feet.
so that's a 6 feet win, and to me, that makes sense. So the biggest concern that I am hearing from the neighborhood is the sizing and massing because it is on a corner lot. And so that 75-foot run is the big concern there, and we've done nothing to address that. It's still 75 feet.
We have no problem. The storage units was just a matter of convenience for whomever lived there, but we don't have an issue. It's not something we have to have. We just start breaking up, we've lost 2 feet on the end of the house by recessing that wall or those walls. And actually, we did it on both sides. When we came here the last time, it was just on the side that's on Pickett Street. But we did it on both sides just to give it continuity. So again, we're trying here. We're trying, But if it's an issue with multifamily, that's not something we can change.
Yeah, again, I didn't mention anything about multifamily. My concern is the overall length of the building.
We can certainly reduce that. That's no problem.
Well, I would also add that the length is the same length as the back porch, and massing says, the massing guidelines say to break it up into forms and it's similar openings to what is typical in the neighborhood. Having a back porch is typical in the neighborhood. So cutting that off and having a flat back would be odd. It would not meet the massing guidelines as much. That the storage is centered, so it separates the two back porches into two masses. Seeing an open back porch from the street, I mean, I don't see that that's adding much to the 75 feet. It's not a solid wall. The solid wall is probably, well, what do you have, like 50 feet in the front now and 20 feet in the back, maybe not even that. So if you're talking about solid wall and breaking that up, I don't think removing the porch is the best option.
I may ask Commissioner Shelton, is your suggestion to remove the back porch or simply remove the storage so it gives the appearance of an open-aired back porch, which I think would, you know, even though we're probably measuring, I think, from step to step, right? It would at least give it the appearance of being a much shorter structure. I think that's my main concern here, right? If it weren't on a corner lot, probably not as big of an issue because you're not going to have someone driving down the street seeing all 75 feet of the structure. But here, in just looking at some other homes in the neighborhood, you know, while there might be a few examples of a 70-foot plus structure, you know, you don't typically see that on a corner lot. And as staff mentioned, we have denied requests in the past when a structure of that length is on a corner lot, just because of the visibility from the public right-of-way, and that's what we consider. So I guess, taking it back to Commissioner Shelton, is that your thinking, is that removing the storage and giving it the appearance of an open-aired porch or making it an open-aired porch would visually create a shorter structure?
Yeah, I think it would. In my mind, it would, just because even with the storage units moved to the center, you're still going to have a break and the roof line still extends that way. A lot of the houses do end. You're going to have a bit of an eave there, but I mean, you don't have to have as much of a roof line jut out there. So I do think visually that would help. Yeah.
Well, I'm fine with, like, again, removing the storage building if that's what we have to do. Again, going back to Ms. Wallings, if we don't have the back porch, that's fine too. We're trying to accommodate, we're trying to make this where it would present as what we would want to live in. And I thought the back porch was ideal, but, we don't, that's not something we have to have.
All right, do any other commissioners have questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. All right, would any members of the public like to speak on this project? Thank you very much. If you would, please state your name for the record and whether you swear to tell the truth in these proceedings.
I'm Jane Britton, and I'm going to tell you the truth.
Thank you very much.
I submitted some comments in writing earlier. I felt compelled to be here today in person because so many of my neighbors could not make it today, but I think they've also written to you. I do take exception to Mr. Pressey's comments about multifamily units in our neighborhood. We have a number of duplexes. Historically, as living there 40 years, we've had a number of neighbors who've lived in duplexes. There's even some quadruplexes. But as you say, that's not a concern for y'all. That's a zoning issue. I want to talk about scale. And I appreciate your comments and observations on the corner lot and the 75-foot length of this building. It bothers me a little bit that staff is so eager to operate under a guideline that would put such a large footprint in a historic district. One of the questions I would direct to them, we're setting precedents here for the future of our neighborhood and the buildings that go there. What if this were a two-story building that was 70 feet in length? Would that be acceptable? That would be a huge building.
Yeah, I will say scale, the length is one part of scale.
Yes,
So
and
if
it's-
it was a two-story building, yes, that would be way too large.
Yeah,
So
I think
scale
we-
takes into consideration multiple aspects.
I think we would consider the totality of the circumstances, right? So I think to Rachel's point, it would add to the massing of the building in a two-story, 75-foot-long structure would be wildly different from what we're looking at here.
Well, also, I would take exception with the average length of the homes being 60 feet. I mean, on Gladden alone, my house is 36 feet square. It's on a corner. If I added 36 feet on the back, it would be massive. There would be nothing left. And the setbacks and the zoning, I just don't think that this is appropriate for one-story structure in our neighborhood. If Mr. Pressey wants to accommodate as many square feet, I think it would do well for him to look at a multi-story structure, maybe 2 stories. He could get just as much or maybe more into a 2-story building at half the length. And that would be more in keeping with the neighborhood. I just hate to see us go down a slippery slope where we have these, I mean, actually, you know, it's the length of a double wide, you know? So I don't think it fits in with the character of the neighborhood at all in terms of the size and the scale. And that's my biggest objection. Yes, I'm concerned about the post and some of the other architectural features. I think this design is much better than what was initially presented. And we want to work with Mr. Pressey too. This has the potential to be an asset to the neighborhood, but as it currently stands, I just think this length of the building on a corner just does not fit in the character of the neighborhood at all. So, you know, hopefully, and he cited some other buildings that are longer. I don't know if those buildings are actually part of the historic district, whether staff has had a chance to look at those. There's no way I can confirm that. So I would ask you to at least defer it again to give us time to look at this issue of scale and perhaps have more clarification going forward in the future on what the guidelines for a neighborhood like ours would be. And if it's something in Wales Garden, you know, we're Melrose Heights. We're not Wales Gardens. The houses are smaller. It's a completely different character. So, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public like to speak? Thank you. If you would please state your name for the record and whether you swear to tell the truth in these proceedings.
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Martha Fowler. I am telling you the truth.
Very good. Thank you.
I feel very passionate about my neighborhood. I've only lived there for 74 years. I live in a corner house. If I wanted to add that much length to a house, it just doesn't make any sense to me. The culture of our neighborhood just doesn't make any sense to me that you would put this house here. It doesn't seem to have the scale. It's too long. It does not have the inherent character of our neighborhood. I know y'all have better things to do than drive around Melrose, but Melrose just does, this is just not a typical house in Melrose. 75 feet is just too long. I really liked him until he said the thing about we were masking things, that we discriminate against multifamily, because we don't. We do that all, you know, we have multifamily houses all over our neighborhood and we welcome them. We're a very welcoming community. That kind of annoys me, because if anybody's masking anything, calling a two-bedroom house, calling a three-bedroom house a two-bedroom house times 2 is masking. That kind of bothers me, because, and I would like, you've been working in our neighborhood for several months now, but you've never been to a neighborhood association meeting and you've never been.
I'm sorry, if
talked-
you would please speak into the microphone.
He's never been to our neighborhood. He's never talked to any of the neighbors about how we personally feel. He's strictly talked to staff. And I realize that staff matters, but how you fit into the community should matter too, particularly in a historically designated neighborhood with the strong character that we have. We are usually terribly, terribly welcoming and wonderful, and we love to support the people that want to come and be part of us. This still screams to me that it looks like an army barracks, and it doesn't have the character of the houses in our neighborhood, and it doesn't have the length of the houses in our neighborhood. Corner lots are totally different from a house that's, as you said, in between two houses where you can't see how deep the house is. To me, it's just, I would like for us to go back to the drawing board, come up with some character and come up with some scale that makes more sense to me. And there's an awful lot of things that the neighborhood finds that are inappropriate for this, but they're not to be discussed here at DDRC. And I've asked our councilman how we can address it, because it doesn't seem to fit in zoning and it doesn't seem to fit in DDRC, but it has to do with the character of our community. I dare say that whoever approved it for zoning didn't realize that Gladden Street is this wide, and you can only park on one side, which is not the side that this house is on. So there will be no parking in front of the house. I have a problem with the city only requires having 2 parking spaces. That's not your problem either. But for 3 bedrooms times 2 means 12 cars. And it's really kind of difficult to understand where we go to the city to answer those questions. But I would like for you to defer it, to have a better plan and a better scale with more devotion to the character of the community that he wants to build in. And we welcome him to come and talk to us as individual neighbors and talk to us as a neighborhood association, because we'd be delighted to talk to him and help him through it and guide him to make him more fit in with our community. We're a very special neighborhood. We have the strongest guidelines that the city allows, and it kind of matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public like to speak on this project? All right. Absolutely. Would the applicant like to respond to any of the public's comments?
I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor this, but I do want to address that. She mentioned parking. We would be the first multifamily unit out there that have planned parking that has been approved by DOT because of where we have it on the lot. It's not close to Gladden Street. It's on the back portion of this. So I'm not sure if she saw that part of the plan, but we have planned parking, 8 parking spaces. I keep hearing 12 residents. There's 3 bedrooms per unit. The in bedroom has 2 sinks in it. I addressed this the last time. That's not necessarily meaning that we're looking for students to live in this place. It could be a family. That's why we put 2 sinks in that in bedroom. I keep hearing 12. I don't know what kind of arithmetic we're using. It's not 12. It's 3 bedrooms. Well, it's 2 bedrooms and an office, but it could be 3 bedrooms. We're transparent. Oftentimes when developers come in to make these presentations, a floor plan is not presented, just the exterior. We present the floor plan to the board and to Ms. Wallings because we want to be transparent about what we're doing. That's where the pushback came back. I had one neighbor came in the last time and said, why don't you take that in bedroom off? I mean, the next thing we'll be hearing is your kitchen is too big or your bathroom is too small or what have you. So I think, I think there's some things to be said about this, but we have planned parking that DOT came out last week and said they felt like it was in a great location. It was away from the stop sign. You could exit off of Pickett. This lot, again, has been there for 39 years and has only served to a parking lot
for 1200 Gladden Street for Airbnb. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate you addressing the public's concerns, although I'll state again for the record that we do not consider parking. That's outside of our purview. So just to put it out there, I don't think that would have any effect on, certainly mine or any of my fellow commissioners' decisions or questions or considerations in this project.
I have a question for staff. Would a two-story building on this lot make sense? I know that block, the 1100 block of Gladden is 1 stories, but across the street you have that 2-story Tudor. And then further down Bratton, you would have 2 stories. Like 2 stories are very common as you move down Bratton. So would a 2-story make more sense here to shorten it on the lot, but still achieve the size that you would want to get out of the units?
Yeah, again, I mean, this is a neighborhood that has a lot of variation in the size of the houses. So there are those very small houses right there at that end block closest to Millwood. But then right next to this across the street is a larger scale 2-story Tudor. And next to that is a smaller story, 1-story little brick house. So you do see that variation. When we look at this generally in, context, this is a neighborhood that has that variation. So yes, that could be appropriate in this spot. Yeah.
No, thank you. But you as the applicant, would you be open to building a 2-story dwelling on the property?
My only reservation is,
Sorry, if you would please come to the podium. Thank you.
my only reservation about 2-story is I have been an advocate for individuals with disabilities, and my practice deals with individuals with disabilities, and I would like that to be an option for individuals as well if someone happens to want to rent from that location or at that location. So that would be my only reservation. And right now, I'm struggling with the meniscus torn, had this one done, and I didn't really like to deal with the stairs. That's my issue. But, we're open.
No, yeah, I appreciate that as someone who cares about that as well. I mean, I definitely think that we could you potentially fit a bedroom down there for anyone that would be disabled and need a first floor. I think potentially the path forward would be a 2-story dwelling, because that would address a lot of the common thing we keep hearing from the neighborhood is how long it's running on the property because it's a corner lot. And across the street, you have the 2-story building. And I think there's you can mimic that building in some way. And then you get the scaling of that building, I think would make a lot more sense for this lot. And you would still achieve the the duplex with the 2 dwellings at the size you would want to have. And potentially even realize more room for parking or other amenities for the residents that would move in there, because you'd have more land. You'd have more land open on that lot.
I do want to address that. I just want to make sure we're not going down a rabbit hole, because if we do that, then we have neighbors when their intentions could possibly still be that it's multifamily, that, each time we adjust these plans, there's a cost associated with this. And again, we presented this plan feeling as though we had just 6-8 months ago just designed a plan that came here that had no issues. Again, it's a corner lot, but I just want to make sure, we're not doing something to try and accommodate the neighbors and then they still have a problem with multifamily. I know that's not your purview, but it is something for me to consider just going forward.
Yeah, and I would echo Mr. Salibi's comments that this commission will not be, considering the fact that it's a duplex as a way to reject this property. That's not in the purview of this commission. That's not something you need to worry about.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me ask, before you step down, and this is a question for staff, to maybe which you can address, depending on their answer. If we were to, just kind of thinking about this pragmatically, we've already delayed the project one time. If we were to approve the project with the condition that it be changed to 2 stories, I mean, that would have to come back, right? Okay, yep. I guess while you're up here, are there any others recommendations made by staff, particularly the extension of the front porch from 4 to 6 feet that you have a problem with?
Well, we've adjusted that. We've
Oh, it's already been adjusted to 6 feet?
Yes, we've already
perfect.
adjusted to 6 feet. Again, we've done everything we've been asked to do.
And none of the other recommendations made by staff you have a problem with?
We've done them all. We've done everything. Again, 1118 next door is a ranch-style unit that's similar in length. We've done 1118 Gladden Street is next door to this project. And it has,
It doesn't appear to be well, I guess the outline here is of the lot, not of the structure.
I'd also add to that, I think that was something that we didn't cover. Oftentimes, some of the comparison that we're looking at with massing, we have to take into consideration 1200 Gladden Street is a 2-story building, but it's a 100-foot lot. This is a 150 feet lot. So when we're comparing massing, we have to look at lot sizes as well.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Could staff comment on that? I don't think we consider the size of a lot in considering the massing of the building, do we?
Right, it would be more building to building, but I mean, I know I have made recommendations that something felt too big on a small lot before, but it's just contextual, so it's hard to say.
And real quick, Rachel, you referenced the project in Wales Gardens months ago. We denied because of, I think it was massing. I mean, it was just, it was a large contiguous building on a corner lot, and I think therein lied the issue, right? That you could see the full length of the building from the public right-of-way. And I'll just be frank, that's my issue here. Again, if it were somehow masked, and I know you've probably decided to put the fence up to help with that, and I think that would certainly help a little bit. You know, I think maybe restrictions on fence height, you'd still be able to see that there is one contiguous building going so far back on the lot. And again, just to be honest, that's my big concern is the length of the building. Different if you couldn't see it from the public right away, but you can.
I have a question. I just want to confirm the length of the building the staff has, the length that is currently displayed from the applicant, is that fine with the staff at this point, or is it too long, or?
Staff found it to be okay once it was broken up into different sections. It's typical of what we do with additions. The property he mentioned earlier at 1420, I think, Woodrow Street, is a historic house that had an addition, and then it had another addition put onto it. So it's a normal pattern. We cannot tell people they cannot put additions onto their home. So historic houses sometimes get longer over the years. So
I'll just add, if I can, I don't know the gentleman, but he was sitting in the back of the room, and I think he's a neighbor. Just passed me something and said 2801 Bratton Street appears to be the same size. I don't know, I haven't looked at this, but I see different things. And again, having had the experience, if I wasn't the owner of 1409 and didn't been through this board just 8 months ago, I wouldn't have these concerns. But I think having been here just that short period of time, having almost the exact project in this neighborhood, that's where I have the issue.
Yeah, for me, the difference between those two properties is the Woodrow Street house is in between two buildings, and this one is at a corner lot, so it's more exposed to the public.
Yeah, and I was just thinking of other things like the columns, the front porch, all that stuff is in keeping with what we did on 1409. But I understand your concerns is the length, and I do get that. I would preferably, if it was my choice, I would prefer it to be ranch style. I'd prefer that, just to be honest with you.
And personally, I think that would make sense if the house was fronting Bratton, but it's because it's fronting Gladden that creates to me, it's going to run long instead of it running like a ranch style house, yeah.
I think when we say the house is 70 feet long, I don't think that's accurate. I think when you look at the porch's front and rear, that gives you the 70 feet. 70, I think it's, I think we've modified that some, but That includes porches. Yeah. So the wall section, the master itself is 14. You have 2 rooms there, that's 14. So the wall section, as it relates to the house, is not 75 feet. That's the entire building, including front and rear porches.
Sure, sure. And I guess to your point, or maybe to Commissioner Shelton's point, if you would remove the storage space, it would give the appearance of a shorter structure.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
All right. Do any other commissioners have questions, comments for staff or the applicant? If there are none, I will open the floor to a motion. Thank you, Mr. Prezi.
I'm going to make a motion to defer the request for certificate of design approval for 1130 Gladden Street to allow the applicant to work with staff to refine the design of the property.
Would you like to add any particulars to that to guide them?
Yeah, I think to inquire about a 2-story dwelling as opposed to a 1-story dwelling, and then see how that massing would change would change the massing on the property itself. Yeah.
Could that also include removal of the storage units as a consideration?
I think for me, if I don't want to get too, but I think if it was a 2-story dwelling, then I think it allows you a lot more flexibility there on if the storage would be attached to the dwelling or not.
Maybe if we, of course, it's your motion, if we modify it slightly to kind of leave it open-ended for them to consider the length of the building.
Yeah.
Of course, the 2-story option would be included within that.
Yeah, and I think for me, I would like to not constrain you. Like, I think you've heard our concerns, you've heard from the neighbors' concerns, and you can take those into your design, but I don't want to put too many constraints on, if you're going to explore a 2-story, then, I don't want to constrain on what that has to look like. I mean, consider the design of other 2-stories in the neighborhood, especially in that vicinity.
I just want to get clarity because the last time I was here, the board asked us to look at massing. She asked me to do a session with Ms. Walling to look at massing on that wall. There was no recommendation for a 2-story. There was no recommendation for reducing the size. As a matter of fact, the 2 architects on the board said they thought what was there was fine. So there was no recommendation at that time to reduce the size of that unit. And so I'm not exactly sure what I should be doing when it comes to staff, because I work with Ms. Wallings. She made these recommendations, and I don't have a clear understanding of what I should be doing.
Would y'all want to do a work session on this?
I think it would be appropriate for this one.
It's an option. I mean, we can set that up if that's something the commission desires.
We don't have the architects today, so I think it would be good to have that design session, and then we could.
That was what they said. I mean, it's on record that they said, work on the massing, the size was fine. So I'm just conflicted, just to be honest with you.
So any
Understood.
work
Thank you.
session would include the 2 architects on our commission, hopefully?
We would certainly want that, yes, they were available.
Yeah, just to go back to what Mr. Prezi said, the 3 items that were adjusted were the items that staff spoke to the commission about last time, and those certain people who are not here today said that those sound like good ideas. So to his point, he has addressed what the commission told him last time, the feedback from commission. So that's why staff was recommending approval of this, because this is what we heard last time.
Yeah, again, I don't remember exactly what I said last time, but I believe I did mention concern over the length of the building, so.
Yeah, I think you referenced to doing a building in the back an ADU and one in the front.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
checked with the city on that, and they
That's not
said that
allowed.
it would not be
Yep.
permissible to have dual meters. So again, I've explored it. I go to architects, we draw this thing, and it's another check. It's another check, and I think that's unfair to the applicant.
At the last hearing, was there also a concern with the length of the roof line? Did you explore any possibilities of amending the way that the roof was constructed?
Well, yeah, we adjusted the roof, and that's where we dropped the rear roof down. This was a recommendation from Ms. Wallings. I had concerns about it because of the eave work. I sent it to my trust company, and they said, well, you may have some issues there with the eave because it's, so we reduced it in 2 feet. She recommended 1 feet, we reduced it in 2 feet to give that extra space there.
And yes, it was something that Mr. McKenzie and Mary Beth were discussing, was different ways to break up the roof so it's not one continuous line, which he has addressed.
I mean, if I may, can I ask staff, and apologies, I don't recall what was said at the last meeting where this project or application was discussed. But, being informal, I mean, are our concerns with length unjustified? I mean, are we kind of going down the wrong path here? Because it does seem a little long considering it's all viewable from the public right-of-way. But, we defer on a lot of things to staff, and so I'd like to hear y'all's opinion of our concerns with the length.
I mean, it is one aspect. It's definitely part of it. You can consider size, scale, so it's in there. But my comment was that length is one part of scale. As we've said, if this was a 2-story building at this length, that would be huge and out of scale for this neighborhood. So in staff's opinion, it's not out of scale. And it's pretty typical for new construction, seen everywhere.
Thank you. I mean, I am sympathetic to the fact that this is costing you not only, cash out of your pocket, but also time, which obviously is money also deferred and just out of your pocket. So I want to consider everything staff is saying, and I don't know, maybe, well, just thinking about the length of the building and maybe kind of losing sight of the forest for the trees. It's not length in a vacuum, it's length considering the entire size of the structure. And so maybe, to Rachel's point, if it's 75 feet long and 2 stories, yeah, that's a size issue. But if it's only 1 story, maybe that's something you take into consideration. So I'll just kind of put that out there.
This is not
still-
50% of occupancy on the lot, too. Just want to make sure I clarify that. This lot is not being 50% occupied by the size of this unit. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes, so per zoning, he's allowed 50% lot coverage. So I think that's what his point is.
Yeah, which I guess that would be a prohibition to a length of the building, right? If it did exceed 50% of the footprint of the lot, then you wouldn't be able to design a 75-foot building.
Yeah, it's lot coverage.
Yeah.
And we're not exceeding that. We're not meeting that at this point. So we are adhering to all those guidelines.
I guess that's I think outside of our purview, but
Yeah, I think for me, just knowing that block, 75 foot would be longer than the other houses on Gladden next to it, right? And then I think it would actually run longer than that 2-story across the street from Bratton. So for me, it's just because it's on a corner lot, and it's going to run longer than that 2-story, and it's also going to run longer than the interior properties. That to me is what the sizing of it just doesn't make sense, as that's going to be the end cap of that block. And I think if it was on the inside, sure, there's probably more flexibility there, like your Woodrow Street house. But on the fact that it's on this corner lot at the end, it's going to run longer than the buildings surrounding it, seems odd to me.
The lot is longer too on Bratton.
Fair.
The lot is 50 feet shorter.
That's fair. I'm thinking about the buildings and the way Melrose is set up. That would look odd.
And if we remove the storage space, would that shorten the building? Did we say that already?
It would bring it to, what, 8 feet shorter than it is now?
And
So 68 feet, which is,
that's something you're open to doing?
I'm open to that.
and I will say, we do struggle with the the issue of zoning allows outright for someone to have a certain amount of square footage on a property. So we struggle with that because they are allowed that. So these efforts of breaking up the massing, bringing in walls, lowering roofs, is in an effort to bring down the scale of the building so that it is more in keeping with the guidelines in the neighborhood. So the front part of the building, if you cut off the back, is actually probably shorter than most of the buildings around there. It's like 48 feet maybe. The house next door, I believe I measured it at 60 feet. So if you're looking at it in terms of massing, the massing has been broken up as is recommended in the guidelines.
Rachel, just so
Square
I'm clear-
footage wise, though, is the zoning.
Just so I'm clear, so I think I might have been looking at this incorrectly. On the cover page of the application, or of the packet that staff's put together, the blue line is the lot. The structure next door to the right, as we're looking at it, that is, you said 60 feet?
The front structure, I measured it at 60 feet, and that is with porches. That is a roof line. And what you're seeing in the back is a second structure that they have, kind of like what Josh was recommending. So,
Which isn't feasible on this lot.
correct,
That's not
correct,
allowed.
yeah.
All right, well, Mr. Prezi, thank you so much for working with staff and answering all of our questions and addressing, to the extent you think is reasonable, the neighborhood's concerns. But the floor remains open for a motion if anybody would like to make one.
I'd like to make a motion. So my motion is to approve 1130 Gladden Street, request for certificate of design approval for new construction, assuming that the applicant is able to work with staff recommendations, and I'm going to read those. The cement fiberboard sliding will have a smooth texture with 4 to 5 inch reveal. The front porch will be at least 6 feet deep. Porch flooring may be tongue and groove or cement. Windows will be aluminum clad with trim around each window with mullions supporting the paired windows at least 4 inches wide. The front door may be wood or fiberglass with final design approved by staff. The foundation will use a brick veneer with concrete or brick stairs. The back portion of the building from the side door to the back porch will be inset by at least 1 foot. Details of the parking area and fence to be approved by the staff, and removing the storage space to shorten the building.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Will staff please call the vote?
Ms. Gallo?
No.
Mr. Greenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Lee Decker?
Yes.
Mr. Shelton?
No.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
And Mr. Salibi?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you, everybody. Is there any other business for the commission to consider?
No.
Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.